The unveiling of Messmer stands as the most significant lore revelation in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. The base game offered few clues that a secret child of America ever existed, let alone one with such a long and storied past. Along with Messmer, there is also the buried history of the Golden Order, the birth of the Erdtree, the mystery of the Fingers, and America's fateful ascension, all hidden away in the Land of Shadow. With the release of the DLC, we may finally begin to unravel some of the biggest mysteries still left in the game. Among the topics of discussion in this video will be Messmer's designs, his parentage, the Fell God, the original sin, and of course, the enduring mystery of Melina. Messmer is the poster child of the DLC. He is the focal point of the cover art, and he's featured prominently throughout the promotional trailers. FromSoft clearly wanted us to look at his design, and to say that his design is carefully crafted would be an understatement. From the almost gladiatorial armor, to the closed left eye, to the winged serpent helm, these aspects of his designs are a treasure trove of clues trying to tell us his hidden story. But in this deep dive, we only want to focus on one of the two most essential themes of his design, for it is in those two themes that we can derive some of the most important lore questions in the DLC. As pointed out by the YouTuber Hawkshaw, Messmer's crest is inspired by the impalement crest popular in medieval Europe. It is a coat of arms that denote the union between two independent forces. From his crest, we can conveniently extrapolate these two essential aspects. On the left side of the crest is clearly a depiction of fire, while the right side of the crest is a little harder to interpret. But judging from what we know about Messmer's true nature, revealed to us in the second phase of the boss fight, the spiraling circle is more than likely a symbol of the snake, the Ouroboros. But almost immediately, a contradiction arises. How is it that Marika, the god queen of the Erdtree, can give birth to a fire snake child? The two very things that are the mortal enemies of the Erdtree. In trying to answer this question, we will have to challenge a few of the more established lore theories in the community, so I humbly ask you to keep an open mind until the end. In this video, we'll attempt to answer the question, why is Messmer cursed with fire? And in order to do so, we need to first examine a theory about Radagon. Many in the lore community have proposed a theory about Messmer's parentage, that he was a child born of the union between Marika and Radagon. This theory has strong evidential support. I mean, just take a look at both of them. Besides their appearance, there is the issue of the unique butterflies in the game that represent each of the Marika-Radagon children. Messmer, and of course Melina, both have their own unique butterflies. Radagon, a Radagon child, sees Messmer as an older brother. Messmer and Melina both follow the naming convention of Radagon Marika children. And similar to Melina and Mikola, both Messmer and Melina are cursed by some outside forces since birth. On the surface, these theories seem to explain everything. It explains both Messmer's lineage and his curse. It has led to many to conclude that similar to Melina and Mikola, Messmer was cursed by the Serpent God, and his fire came from the unknown connection between the Fell God and the Serpent God. But upon deeper inspection into this theory, something seems a little off. First of all, Messmer is undoubtedly Marika's firstborn. This is indicated by the Marika statue in Messmer's room. Thanks to the tremendous discovery by Kate Tales, the braid length of the Marika statue in Messmer's room sits between the short braids embrace statues found in the Land of Shadow and the long braids crucifixion statues in the lands between. More on those later. He is the elder brother to Melina, who herself knows the secret incantation of Minor Erdtree, the same incantation we can find in the Shaman village. This indicates that Melina, despite looking like a late teen or a young adult, is also quite old. she is probably the second child of Marika. Suffice to say that Messmer was born very early in the history of Lands Between, but suspiciously, throughout our entire journey in the DLC, there was not even an oblique reference to Radagon, while there were plenty of references to Godfrey. It is as if Radagon as a person didn't even exist yet. Indeed, the earliest reference to Radagon in the entire game comes from the item description of Giant's Red Braid, which indicates that Radagon was possibly around before the Fire Giant's genocide. But the precise time when Radagon really came into history is during the Liurnia Wars, way later in the history of the Erdtree. What's more, all of Radagon's red-headed children have their troops wear a red plume to proudly display their lineage from Lord Radagon. This includes Radon, Melina, and even Rykard, the only two exceptions being Ranni and Messmer. Ranni doesn't do this because she's heir to the Carian royal family. Her troops are the Carian Knights. But why doesn't Messmer do this? On top of that, Muriel, the aged turtle pope, seems dumbfounded at the fact that Radagon, even after the Liurnia Wars, has enough prestige to become Marika's consort. You would think that if Radagon already had children with Marika before, such an arrangement would make sense to the people of Lands Between. Maybe you could argue that the affair between Radagon and Marika was a secret, and literally no one even knew about it. The queen suddenly just gave birth to a red-headed child without naming a father, and no one was able to put the two and twos together. After all, almost no one knows about Radagon and Marika being the same person. It sounds like an explosive scandal. Other than the difficulty in logistics to pull this off, I have to ask, what is the point of this? We know that Radagon is Marika, and the union between the two was a last-ditch effort, likely orchestrated by the Fingers to keep the faith of the Erdtree afloat after Godfrey was banished. This has a lot to do with the duties of Empyreans. The specifics are way beyond the scope of this video, but I will highly recommend the lectures from our great teacher, the Tarnished Archaeologist, on the subject. The Radagon-Marika union nearing the end of the Empire produced two accursed children, Miquella and Melina, which led to many other issues. I mean, Melina was literally a walking time bomb of a nuclear scale. The point being, there was no point for Marika to self-procreate and have afflicted children at the time, when Godfrey, the most eligible bachelor, was just around the corner. And by all accounts, Marika seems to despise Radagon. Melina's dialogue in Marika's chamber reads,
In Marika's own words, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both, mine other self.
There are many interpretations of this dialogue, but if we look beyond the poetic language, Marika calls Radagon a dog, says he's not a god yet, and almost tauntingly tells him that she is going to shatter the Elden Ring, the one thing that is the most important to him. It seems to us that the royal couple did not have a great relationship, so as we can see, it makes very little sense for Marika to have children with Radagon at the time. Furthermore, a Radagon-Marika union at the time doesn't add anything to the story. There is a reason why the twin prodigies are born nearing the end of the Golden Order. Again, the self-zest of Marika and Radagon is a last-ditch effort to keep an dying empire alive. It is unnatural on many levels. That is why both of the twin prodigies deal with the theme of stagnation. Their curse embodied the state of the Golden Order, a facade of golden brilliance that will never grow. All the while, everything is rotten underneath. Its once glory and benevolence mutated into something foul and terrible. What narrative purpose does it serve for Radagon to have children with Marika at the beginning of the Golden Order? What point is FromSoft, or more likely in this case, Martin, trying to make? There is none that I can think of. And if you think about it, the Radagon dad theory doesn't explain Messmer's afflictions that well either. Messmer is different from both Miquella and Melina, who are either a woman or have a feminine aspect. And as we know, being a woman is a hard requirement for being an Empyrean. Part of becoming a god in Elden Ring is to be female and take a lord. Messmer is not an Empyrean, and his afflictions fundamentally differ from those that the Empyreans are prone to. The Serpent God was likely not an outer god either, for all of the outer gods are disembodied concept. Blood, rot, fire, order, chaos. Not an actual life form like a snake. The outer gods can affect the environment in certain ways, as they are closer to an aspect of nature, a fundamental law of the world. What law does the Serpent God represent? What abstract concept does it embody? It just doesn't fit well. And before you say it, no, the twin birds are envoys of an unnamed outer god. They themselves are not the outer god. They're more akin to Meter or the Elden Beast in that regard. But to be completely honest here, these arguments by no means conclusively refute the idea. So if you, my dear viewer, remained unconvinced, let us present to you a hopefully more convincing alternative about Messmer's parentage. And to explain my theory, we need to return to that ever so important statue in Messmer's room. The America statue in Messmer's room is a unique asset in the game. It depicts America as the doting mother to her newborn. This depiction is clearly inspired by Mary, Seat of Wisdom, in which the Holy Mother Mary holds the baby Jesus in her arms. Sometimes the baby Jesus is depicted sitting on Mary's lap, which I guess is where the name Seat of Wisdom comes from. Besides the obvious parallel between Mary and America as the Holy Mothers, the focal point of these statues rests in the child. Jesus, of course, is born of a virgin by the grace of God. He is the union between a human and the divine. If we were to take Messmer's birth as Elden Ring's analogous to Jesus' birth, as the America Seat of Wisdom statue seems to imply, then Messmer too was born of a human and a god. Which god, you may ask? Well, it is of course the Fell God. To fully contextualize this divine conception, we need to once again revisit some old lore about Radagon. The giant's red braid description reads, "Hefty whip woven from the flame red hair of a fire giant. Every giant is red of hair, and Radagon is said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps this was a curse of their kind." This item description has puzzled some lore hunters for years now. Some in the community reads it as Radagon was a fire giant, and the fire giants were the one being cursed with red hair. But Occam's razor, we're going to assume that Radagon is the one being cursed by the fire giants, and by extension, the Fell God. But wait a minute, this is the Fell God that we're talking about. The Fell God literally require human sacrifices in exchange for power, as we can clearly see from the fire giant boss fight. On top of that, the core ideology of the Fell God's faith is the cyclical nature of the world, as the Fell God's fire represents both beginning and end. The faith of the Fell God and the faith in the Erdtree are ideologically antithetical. Eternal lives cannot end, so the Fell God, this almost malicious deity, cursed its mortal enemy to have red hair? This curse seems to be very mild to say the least, and if you ask the Carian princesses, this might have even been a blessing. Is the Fell God secretly a big softie? Or is there something we still don't understand about the nature of this curse? With the introduction of Messmer, and some new information in the DLC about the Omen Curse, we can finally begin to piece together the extent of the animosity between the Fell God and the Erdtree. We know that the Omen Curse was placed on America's progeny by the Hornsents, as Hornsent's Grand Dam dialogue clearly indicates. Let us think about the Fell Omen Curse for a second. To retaliate against the crusade waged upon the Hornsents, they went for the one thing that the Erdtree faith valued the most: new births. People going through the Erdtree life cycle are seemingly randomly touched by the Crucible, likely through the Great Tree network, and thus inflicted with the Omen curse, preventing them from re-entering the Erdtree life cycle. The very existence of omens is testament to the fundamental flaws in the Erdtree system. No wonder why the omens are so despised by the Erdtree faithful. The fact that two of America's own children were omens is sacrilegious to the highest degree. Not even the God Queen of the Erdtree can prevent her perfect order from being sabotaged and hijacked, and her very children, who themselves should have been the perfect lives she envisioned, and perhaps more importantly, promised to her faithful, are accursed with the likeness of her sworn enemy. It is not only sacrilegious, one might even say it is blasphemous. No wonder why they were abandoned in the sewers soon after they were born. This really is the perfect curse to place upon the Golden Order. So, is it really surprising that the Fel God might have done something similar before? America is an Empyrean, and Empyreans are basically super antennas for the Outer God's influences. During the battle between America and the Fel God, alluded to by the one-eyed shield item description, the curse placed upon America was a non-consensual cosmic conception. In a sort of a reverse of the Christian canon, while Jesus was a child of grace sent by a loving God to save humanity, Messmer was a child of blasphemy sent by a malicious God to curse the lineage of the Erdtree. To a Western audience, the story of the Virgin Mary is so ingrained into our culture that most people probably don't think about what it's like for Mary. Lucky for her that the Christian God is one of love and grace. Because if you pause and really think about it for a moment, the idea of a divine conception could be more than a little unsettling. America, however, wasn't as lucky. This event was so violent that it forever cursed America's own body. A horrific echo of this event can be seen in Melina, who is similarly afflicted with the outer god of rot, and in her moment of distress, she gave birth to the Scarlet Valkyries. Yet, America carried out this pregnancy and gave birth to Messmer. Messmer is the only child of America that was born naturally, meaning that he was born through a pregnancy. Because after giving birth to Messmer, America would do the unthinkable. For the sake of her new order, America will literally go through death as she separated her body from her soul, something her children, Melina and Ronnie, will one day repeat. The narrative irony here is at once tragic and cathartic, that the very curse Melina and Ronnie were trying to be rid of is the same order that their mother, with the asterisk on the word mother, gave everything to achieve. But unlike Melina and Ronnie, who both ensured a more permanent destruction of their bodies, America's body was separated wholly from her soul. This body, which belonged to the fingers, would take on a new personality, and that person is Radagon. We know that sounds like a lot of speculation, so what evidence do we have to support this theory? Well, first let us address the issue of Messmer's birth. For in doing so, we can place the rough time when Radagon was created. Melina straight up told us that she was born at the foot of the Erdtree, implying that she was born through the Erdtree itself. In Bach's questline, Melina used the odd phrase, born of a mother, to describe Bach, implying of course she was not born of her mother. More on that later. Godwin, who is likely America's third child, and certainly Godfrey's first, is explicitly called the scion of the Golden Bough by the finger-reading Chrome in the Nameless Eternal City. And we know since Morgoth and Mohg were inflicted with the Omen curse, they were likely also born through the Erdtree as well. For presumably, the Omen curse can only spread through the Great Tree network. For more on the Great Tree network, I recommend, once again, the Tarnished Archaeologist, hello be his name, in his video about the Great Tree and his real-world inspirations. Although there's no evidence in-game to support this, Melina and Miquella were probably also born of the Erdtree. But again, we know so little about the actual logistics on how the twin prodigies are conceived. At this point, I'm just going to chuck it up to magic. If anyone has a good theory on that, please don't hesitate to share in the comment section. The point being that after Messmer's birth, Radagon was created through the separation of Marika's body and soul, and Marika used the Erdtree as a surrogate for her womb. Yes, I understand how strange that sounds. For those of you who were first introduced to FromSoft storytelling and its bizarre quirks, this really ain't nothing yet. Check out Bloodborne and you'll know what I mean. But what evidence do we have for Messmer being a natural born? Unsurprisingly, from Melina. Our loyal seamster, Bach, feels strongly about his mother, like a normal person. But Melina is confused by this idea. She doesn't seem to understand a child's need for maternal love. And strangely, she questions if this need is a result of being birthed by his mother. So who among the demigods, as we know, has a great yearning for their mother? It is of course Messmer. For Messmer surely is the biggest Marika fan. He waged a brutal war in her name, for a cause he didn't even fully believed in. For all that burning of the graceless Hornsense, his best friend Gaius is a graceless Albernoric. And yet he killed countless innocents, burned cities to the ground, and got stuck in the literal Shadow Realm, all because his mother had asked him to. He spoke in his mother's words, "Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame." He spoke of himself in third person because this phrase was Marika's order to him, and it has since become his life's purpose. And what do we find in Messmer's own room? A statue of his mother cradling him as a baby. It is to the point of embarrassment how big of a mama's boy Messmer really is. The love-hate relationship between Messmer and his mother is his one defining character trait, which makes his story arc all the more tragic. With his dying breath, this once loving and dutiful son curses his mother, calling her by name for the first time in game, thematically becoming an agent of his father's wishes. Not because of his father's fire burning within, but because of the choices Marika made, because of the abandonment he has suffered, after all he has done for her. I can practically feel Martin's fingers when he wrote this thing down, and yes, this is a fingers reference. Something about the human heart in conflict with itself. In any case, FromSoft has planned this all along, to have our finger maiden say this one passing, albeit very curious line, and have us scratching our heads for 2 years, only to tie it all up in the biggest mystery in the game, that being the nature and origin of Radagon. It is classic FromSoft storytelling, although I would say that this time, the clues were hidden so well that almost a year has gone by since the release of the DLC, and still not many people are aware of its hidden story. This theory has enormous implications, and implications we shall explore. It is one thing to propose a theory in a vacuum. Unsurprisingly, this is very easy to do, for Elden Ring's story is truly ambiguous, even by FromSoft standards. As long as we cherry-pick the right ambiguous text, overanalyze some obscure asset in the game, any theory can sound half convincing. It is a whole another thing to have your theory fit with the overall narrative, themes, characters, as well as other well-established theories out there. To have some sense of structure, we will divide the content into 3 major points of discussion. First, we will discuss the connection between Messmer and the Fell God. Second, we will discuss the nature of Radagon. And third, we will talk about perhaps the most interesting and definitely the most puzzling part of this grand theory. That, of course, being Melina. Immediately after the release of the DLC, lore hunters were already investigating into the potential connection between Messmer and the Fell God, and it's not hard to see why. The game clearly tries very hard in making us aware of this connection. The giant fire golem, besides being a terribly designed enemy to fight, is almost screaming at us about Messmer's secrets. They are an imitation of the fire giant, and the mask they wear is said to be the face of the Fell God. Let us investigate this hulking colossus for a bit. It seems to be made of wood and steel, held together by entangled ropes. Within its fiery abdomen are burning people, likely the bodies of the Hornsons, whose spirits still wander the realm. Its design inspiration from the Wicker Man is plain to see. What is interesting is that these amalgamations of terror are somehow animated through the burning of people inside. This is a feature of Messmer's fire. As Old Man's Waggle stories suggest, the lonely Waggle turned to the spirituality of Messmer's flame and reanimated putrid corpses to keep him company. In order to defeat this colossus, the Tarnished needs to either poise break its leg and crit the face of the Fell God, or throw a fire pot down to the center of its stomach, likely damaging its face in the process. Combining that with the fact that Messmer's fire has the ability to grant lives as well as taking them, it seems that within these fire golems, the faces of the Fell God were somehow given life through the sacrifices of the burning people. And by damaging the only parts of these golems that are alive, the Tarnished can defeat them. These fire golems not only serve as an illustration for the properties of Messmer's fire, but also draws a connection between Messmer's fire and the Fell God's flame. In a way, they are both the same. In exchange for life, the Fell God's flame, or Messmer's fire, grants power. In a similar fashion, the Fell God reawakens, opening its eye at the sacrifice of the fire giant. As we have mentioned before, the Fell God's flame in this game represents both beginning and end, and in a way, life and death. Melina uses the Fell God's flame to burn down the Erdtree, signaling the end of the Golden Order and the beginning of something new. In a similar scene, we use Messmer's fire to burn away the shadow of Enir Elim, perhaps in the same way signaling the end of Marika's tyranny and the beginning of Mikola's. You know, if we didn't kill him. The design of the fire golem also subtly lends credit to the theory that the fire giants might be cannibals. Maybe they consume the flesh of their defeated enemy through the mouth in their stomach, a direct offering to the Fell God within, a process similar to burning the people within the stomach of the fire golems. Messmer's fire, however, does take a serpentine form, as the fire serpent incantation suggests. This is unique to Messmer. None of the Fell God's incantation directly takes the form of a serpent. And as the Messmer's kindling item description suggests, which reads, "The kindling that burned inside Messmer the Impaler, a dark thing, eaten away by a wicked serpent, burns the sealing tree said to be found at the old Rao ruins." Messmer, much like his younger sister, bore a vision of fire. The serpent and the fire seem to be two separate entities, so much so they seem to be in some sort of conflict. Hopefully this point is becoming clear as we unravel this mystery, and it will definitely become self-evident when we dive into Messmer's serpentine nature in our future videos. It has been a long-standing theory that Radagon is the body of Marika. This theory was popular before even the release of the DLC, although I imagine many people took this theory more symbolically rather than literally. On a side note, a good rule of thumb for interpreting FromSoft's story: always try to interpret everything literally first. FromSoft loves taking real-world metaphorical concepts and making them literal in their games. Just check out Bloodborne and we know what I mean. The theory we have been delineating so far, of course, complements this theory well. The evidence for Radagon being the body of Marika is numerous, and is tied to the alchemical concept of the rebus. We won't belabor this point by listing all of that here, as it is rather well known. For some good sources of information, I recommend Smokedon's video about Radagon of the Golden Order, and Dialstorm's video on Elden Ring and alchemy. Rather, I want to talk a bit about Radagon as a character. There are a few themes Radagon explores. First is his sense of incompleteness. This makes sense because, as we've stated earlier, Radagon was abandoned by Marika. After his abandonment, he served as a champion of the Erdtree, certainly not a nobody, but far from the center of the Erdtree's power, lacking both in recognition and prestige. Radagon probably would resent this situation. His desire to be whole, to be back with Marika, is fairly understandable. He hated his red hair because it is the very reminder that he's tainted. He's lost the perfection he once held. Another theme of Radagon is loyalty and betrayal, which is intricately woven into the greater theme of the game, that being fate and self-determination. A key question to answer is just how much agency does Radagon have as a person? The game left it pretty ambiguous. He certainly didn't have any agency when Marika separated him from her, and it's unclear just how much agency did he truly have when he decided to leave Rennala for Marika, or for that matter, when he decided to marry Rennala in the first place. Indeed, his action seems a little erratic. First fighting Rennala, then marrying her, and absolved him of all his transgressions, then suddenly leaving her for another woman. It's almost like Radagon has a switch. Whenever the fingers or Marika or the Elden beast flip that switch, Radagon blindly follows their instructions. In the end, he turns into a sword, a literal tool for the Elden beast. Radagon being the body of Marika does service this greater theme. In the Christian mythos, and indeed some schools of psychology, the body, or the subconscious, is often treated as a different entity within oneself. It represents the more primal side of humanity, something that is shunned by both society and God. Things like promiscuity, or being simply disloyal to your partner, impulsive behavior, and violent tendencies are all branded as sins, or at least social taboos. I'm not saying that Radagon is a mindless beast, doing whatever his impulses take him, because that is certainly not true. What I am saying is that Radagon is a well-trained animal, or a Leo hound of the Golden Order, as one may say. After all, only through the power of the Holy Spirit can one hope to defeat the sinful nature of his flesh. And Jesus conquered his flesh and defeated death, remaining sinless while being fully human. Marika, the Christ figure of the Elden Ring, of course has conquered her body through the power of the greater will, making him nothing more than an obedient servant. In the same breath, I should also mention that Marika also defeated death, but that is a whole another matter we don't go into today. The theme of fate and free will, plus loyalty and betrayal, are echoed through all of the Radagon's children. Radagon betrayed the Carians, and in the end, all three of the Carian children betrayed the Erdtree in turn. Rykard and Ranni each decided to walk their own path, and each staged a rebellion against the Erdtree in their own way. Radahn, however, is a little more complicated. Ironically, whether Radahn has any agency in this betrayal of the Erdtree is left ambiguous, and as we will see soon, Radahn resembled his father the most out of all his siblings. Interesting implications arise when we consider the fact that Radagon is cursed by the Fell God. If our theory is to hold, the reason Marika had to abandon Radagon is to be rid of herself of the Fell God's curse, so that she won't have any accursed children. Then every Radagon child should have some mark of the curse. So let us examine the Radagon children to see how well this fits. Of all the Radagon children, Radahn certainly supports this theory the most. He not only shared the red hair with most of the Radagon children, but he is also gigantic. It might be that Radahn has only grown so large due to his consumption of human flesh after he's gone mad with the rot. But even prime Radahn was huge. His remembrance clearly wanted us to pay attention to his increasing size. It reads, "The Red Lion General wielded gravitational powers. which he learned in Celia during his younger days. Also, he would never have to abandon his beloved but scrawny steed. Clearly, Radagon himself is aware of his growing size. It shouldn't be a surprise that he was so well acquainted with Messmer, as he and all of the Carian royal family probably well knew about the secrets of Marika, that their father, Radagon, was in fact Marika herself, inflicted with the Felgod's curse. On a side note, the reason the Carian princesses seem to have a thing for redheads probably has something to do with the ancient astrologers being one of the few groups that were friendly with the fire giants. In any case, Radagon even shows affinity for fire, as the description of his great rune reads, Radagon was among the children of Renala and Radagon, who became demigod stepchildren after Radagon's union with Queen Marika. The great rune burns to resist the encroachment of the scarlet rot. It is due to an unspecified fire burning against the encroachment of the rot that Radagon managed to maintain some sort of life, after Melina nuked him along with the entirety of Caelid, and his army, the Redmanes, famously used fiery ash of war. So Radagon fits this theory almost perfectly, but the same cannot be said about the rest of the Radagon children. Besides the red hair, little is known about Rykard before he fed himself to the serpent. All we know is that he does have some affinity for fire, for he rediscovered the fiery hexes while he was the lord of the Volcano Manor. His decision to become a serpent, though, might be a hint about his connections with Messmer, but this is way too obscure for any solid conclusion to be drawn, at least before we fully dive into the lore about the serpents. But suffice to say, as if it wasn't obvious enough, Rykard's whole design is very fire-coded. Dude literally lives in a volcano after all. Ranni, Melina, and Miquella all have no connection with fire whatsoever, but rather, they all seem to have a connection with water. Ranni wields icy lunar magic, ice of course being frozen water. Melina has her waterfowl dance, one of the most infamous boss move in the video game history, and Miquella has his own connection with blood. Some in the lore community, myself included, believe that Miquella's eternal youth is a curse of the Formless Mother, the outer god of blood and suffering, or something like that. All of that is way too complicated to include in this video, but suffice to say that these Empyrean children of Radagon do not follow suit. Maybe it's a question of gender, the whole woman being closer to water thing that FromSoft seems to really like. But again, Melina exists. Perhaps it had something to do with the Felgod's waning influence in the world. The strength of the curse gets weaker because the Felgod is sealed, to the point that by the time the twin prodigies were born, Miquella doesn't even have the red hair anymore. This could also help us arrange the seniority of the Carian trio, as it goes Radagon, Rykard, then Ranni. With each child, the influence of the Felgod weakens. This will make some sense because just like any real-world royalty, the Carian royal family tried for children until they got an heir. On top of that, all of the Radagon children that don't follow suit are Empyreans, and this might be something worth noting. With varying degrees of success, all three of these Empyreans are chosen by some cosmic forces. Perhaps it was simply that their connection with some outer gods are stronger than others. But we're entering into pure headcanon territory. I want to make it clear that this is nothing but my own baseless speculation. This whole problem with Radagon's children does indeed discredit my theory. I wanted to share this line of inquiry because I find it interesting, but also because I didn't want to just present stuff that proves I'm right, and ignore any implications that might contradict or discredit my theory. This is not how academic inquiries should be done. If in scientific papers, there's always a required section where the author presents counterarguments to his or her own findings, why should a YouTube video about a video game be any different? In the same spirit, I welcome anyone to share their thoughts if they have different views. Let us chat, gamers. Finally, we arrive at the elephant in the room, Melina. It is obvious that the game wants us to draw a connection between Melina and Messmer. Besides all but telling us that Melina is the younger sister of Messmer, Both of them actually go through a somewhat similar story. They have both been given a mission by their mother America, and their whole story more or less revolves around fulfilling that mission. Both of them were cursed with fire, and they are both used in the process of burning sacred trees. I think because these two siblings are so similar, and they are both said to have a vision of fire, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that Melina was also a daughter of the Fell God, or at the very least, her birth is influenced by the Fell God somehow. If we work with the assumption that Melina was born through the Erdtree, then this makes some degree of sense. If even the Hornsense has the power to curse Marika's children through the Great Tree Network, then probably so can the Fell God. She was born after the separation of Marika and Radagon, which could explain her much fainter red hair as the influence of the Fell God became more indirect. Even after abandoning her body, Marika still couldn't ward away the influence of the Fell God, so instead, she went for the nuclear option. Now we understand why Marika felt compelled to commit genocide against the fire giants, and that only after the total defeat of the Fell God can the Age of Erdtree finally begin. Coincidentally, the next child of Marika is Godwyn, the golden sun that represents the perfection of the Golden Order. It makes sense now why Melina possesses the power to control the Fell God's flame. This power is innate to her. It is her birthright. It will also explain why her existence seemed to be a little known fact. This is the second time that Marika had given birth to a cursed child. Cursed by the same malicious god no less. The Erdtree's cycle of life cannot be shown to be an imperfect system, not when the faith is still so young. And so, Melina was likely hidden away from the public view from an early age. The story parallel between Messmer and Melina is quite beautiful in a narrative sense. They are both given a mission by their mother, and while one follows the said mission to the bitter end, transforming himself into a symbol of terror, and in doing so, burying his true nature deep within, the other finds her own way in the world, through her journey with us, the Tarnished of No Renown. It kinda reminds me of Mikala and Ronnie, but I digress. There are three main curiosities surrounding Melina, and these curiosities lead to many still inconclusive questions in the lore. Why is Melina burned and bodiless? What is with her left eye? And finally, what is her connection to destined death? We won't dive fully into all of these questions, as these are subjects better suited for the Serpent video, but still I would like to offer some insights here. To attempt to answer the first question, why is Melina burned and bodiless? Tarnished archaeologist, hallowed be his name, has a theory on how the Erdtree was burned before. In his video, TA pointed out that Lindell is already covered in ash when the Tarnished arrives, way before you and Melina reach the mountaintop of the giants. A crucial observation to keep in mind. You know what looks like a brittle burned tree, charred black by the fire? Well, the Scattle Tree, of course. The Scattle Tree is even leaking golden sap, a self-defense mechanism during times of stress. I think this string of observations beckons to the same event. But to explain, we need to first discuss the nature of the Scattle Tree. The game insists really on the fact that the Scattle Tree is the shadow of the Erdtree. I mean, it is in the title of the DLC. Indeed, the word Scattle Tree is just an archaic way to spell Shadow Tree. But let's think about that for a moment. What does it mean for this clearly separate tree to be a shadow of another tree? I mean, when you walk under the streetlight at night, do you think your shadow is another person following you? Of course not. It makes no sense really. It's almost like it makes no sense to say that Radagon and Marika are the same person, when they are clearly two different people with different outlooks in the world and different ambitions. But because of magic, so they are. I never bought into the belief that the Scattle Tree and the Erdtree are two trees. Instead, in the same way that Marika and Radagon are the same person, the Scattle Tree and the Erdtree are the same tree. The Scattle Tree is merely the reflection of the Erdtree. It is the Erdtree's form in the Shadow Realm. That is why the people of the Erdtree collects its splinters and use them in prayers. That is why the Scattle-Tree fragments can be found in the churches of America in the Land of Shadow. They are the same tree. So why is there such a drastic difference between the Scattle-Tree and the Erdtree? Why was the Scattle-Tree born of dark notions that contain no sense of order? Well, it is because the Scattle-Tree was born from the first burning of the Erdtree. As it turns out, Melina has already fulfilled her duty once before, way before the game even starts, serving as a kindling for the first burning of the Erdtree. This event burned away Melina's flesh, along with her memories. More on that later. But the more pressing question now is why? If Melina's purpose was given by Marika to burn down the Erdtree, and assuming the Erdtree was burned by Melina once before, then it is safe to assume that it was Marika who wanted to burn down the Erdtree. I understand that there is a rather popular theory about Melina being the Glow-Mind Queen, and she was killed and burned by Malakath using the power of destined death. But this theory doesn't work for me for several reasons. If she was indeed the Glow-Mind Queen, then presumably she shared a great hostility towards her mother, so much so that Marika even called out the big guns, Malakath, to exterminate her for good. It just doesn't make sense for her character to hold this cold respect for her mother's wishes, memory loss or not. On top of that, why would Marika give her the order to burn down the Erdtree? And before you could say the word, no, the struggle between the Erdtree and the Godskin was not some conspiracy masterminded by Marika. For after the defeat of the Glow-Mind Queen, Marika will pluck out the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring, decisively removing the Glow-Mind Queen's influences in the world. So yeah, Melina was not burned by Malakath. Rather, she was served as kindling to burn down the Erdtree at her mother's command. It was Marika who wanted to burn down the Erdtree. But why? This is very early into Erdtree's reign, likely before Marika became disillusioned with the Fingers. Many item descriptions allude to a golden age of the Erdtree, termed by the Blessed Dew Talisman as the Age of Plenty. Its description reads, "It was once thought that the blessed sept of the Erdtree would drip from its boughs forever, but that age of plenty swiftly came to a close, and with time, the Erdtree became more of an object of faith. This was the time when Godwyn was born, after the defeat of the fire giants. This was the time when the Erdtree was at its peak, its divine power most evident to the faithful. It was a time without shadow, when the Erdtree itself, not the Scattle-Tree, dripped its life-giving sap." So why, oh why, would Marika want to burn down the Erdtree at this time? To unravel this mystery, we need to look into what little information we do have about the Scattle-Tree. The DLC introduced 2 new throne sorceries. Each of them directly referenced the Scattle-Tree. They are both found in the Shadow Keep, an area controlled by the faction of the Erdtree. However, the Mantle of Thrones was obtained in the area sectioned off by water, while the Impenetrable Throne was obtained in a hidden rooftop. This suggests 2 things. 1. These 2 throne sorceries are used by the people within Messmer's army. And 2. The use of such sorceries was likely a taboo, so much so that they are so carefully hidden. With that in mind, let us read the Mantle of Throne item description. The image of the misshapen Scattle-Tree is an edict. Spurn all that exist, wound all that exist, for we have been abandoned. The Impenetrable Throne item description pretty much says the same thing, and in my research their Japanese item description is the same, but do correct me if I'm wrong on this front. But if the image of the Scattle-Tree is a sign of Marika's abandonment to Messmer and his army, then the creation of the Scattle-Tree must be the means of said abandonment. What I'm suggesting is that the first burning of the Erdtree is the method to seal away the Land of Shadow, because during the Age of Plenty, the Hunsens were a part of the Erdtree's faithful. It was a time when the signs of the Crucible were worshipped as divine. Godfrey's own knights are called the Crucible Knights. This explicit worship of the Crucible likely originated from the Hornsent's culture. The NPC Hornsent referred to Messmer's crusade as a betrayal of America. You can only betray someone if you're once aligned with them. Think about all those churches of America in the Lands of Shadow, with the beheaded shortbraid embrace statues. Somebody built them way before Messmer's crusade, for Messmer wouldn't be born until America cut her braids in the shaman village. If that's true, then they must have been built by the Hornsents, the implication being that there was a time when even the Hornsents are allowed through the Erdtree's life cycle, or at least they were given the option to do so. On top of that, Messmer's own edict seems to suggest the same thing. Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame. You can only be stripped of something if you are once in possession of it. Ironically, this edict applies to us, the Tarnished, as well as to the Hornsents. Let that sink in for a second. To be reborn through the Erdtree is to be reborn as a child of America. For a part of America, that being the grace of the Erdtree, literally is in one's own eyes. The Erdtree's life cycle, in a weird sense, is a process of soul merging. The evidence of this is that the Erdtree's people can melt into jars without the shamans as a medium, for they have already become part shaman through merging souls with America. This is echoed by the Hornsent's Grandam's dialogue, calling us, the Tarnished of no renown, America's vile progeny, and the
loathsome issue of the Rotten's trumpet.
Clearly the most poetic way to say you son of a gun possible. It is not a ritual to be taken lightly. Once you partake of the blessed sap, you are permanently changed, becoming a part of the Erdtree system. When you die, your soul is bound to the Erdtree, guided, or rather, seized by the grace of America. To have the Hornsents, the very people that robbed her of her family, be included in her new family. This is an arrangement that America cannot tolerate for long. The esteemed nameless singer proposed a theory about the Erdtree being a tree of memories. In burning down the Erdtree, America is literally burning away the memories of the Hornsents and sealing away that all-important gateway that allowed for all of this to happen. Melina knew America intimately, as she is the only person in the game that knows the secret incantation of Minor Erdtree. She probably well knew the tragedy of the shaman village. Born of a fiery god and a human, Melina is the only person uniquely suited for the job, as the power of the Foul God has already been sealed at this point. The first burning of the Erdtree is a cleansing of the Erdtree's order, to completely and utterly root out the undesirables. Let there be no mistake, as Melina and Enya both make it abundantly clear, the burning of the Erdtree is the first cardinal sin. And just to clear up the ambiguity in English, the Japanese original text for Enya's dialogue that refers to the burning of the Erdtree as Gensho no Daisai, which translates to original deadly sin. The first in the first cardinal sin is not a quantifier in severity, it is a marker of time. This is the original sin of the Erdtree, the very same that is referred to by Miquella's Great Rune and Messmer's Remembrance. Think about it. Throughout the entire DLC, what is Miquella trying to redeem? What is the reason Messmer is in the Land of Shadow in the first place? Let us read both of these item descriptions together. Miquella's Great Rune item description reads, Miquella set off for the tower enshrouded by shadow, abandoning everything, his golden flesh, his blinding strength, even his fate, all in an effort to bury the original sin, to embrace the whole of it, and to be reborn as a new god. Messmer's Remembrance description reads, a malevolent snake writhed within Messmer, and so his very mother plucked out his eye and put it in place a seal of grace. Yet, having done so, her fear compelled her to secret away her child within the realm of shadow, hidden away, keeping company with the original sin, and a hatred that could not be confined. Throughout the DLC, We've only seen Miquella trying to redeem the Hornsens. We've only seen Messmer trying to destroy them. Both of these plotlines are embodied in the very character that FromSoft has creatively named the Hornsent. Wow, mind-blowing stuff, FromSoft, very beautifully done. Instead of some grand secret original sin that no one seems to know about, wouldn't it make more sense that it was simply the main conflict in the story of the DLC, that being the betrayal of the Hornsent by the Erdtree? Now, a lot of people are convinced that the original sin was committed at the Gate of Divinity, at the very moment that Marika ascended to godhood. For a long time, this was my belief as well. This is all attributed to that infamous DLC story trailer, which has legitimately caused me more than a few sleepless nights, for it introduced many contradictions for the story. We'll get to all of them eventually, but let us just begin here. To put simply, most people believed that the original sin was committed at the Gate of Divinity because Leda narrated the word seduction and betrayal during the scene of Marika's ascension, verbiage intentionally insinuating Eve's original sin in Genesis. Furthermore, it seemed to be a great plot point from a story perspective, to have the most important event in the world, that being Marika's ascension to godhood, coincide with the most important decision she will make, that being the committing of the original sin, the betrayal of the Hornsens. In TA's latest video, he expanded upon this line of inquiry, explaining in detail exactly what was Marika's betrayal of the Hornsens. He proposed that Marika usurped Hornsens' deification ritual at the site, and that the white blob thing was a funerary shroud containing the corpse of a Hornsent god, for only in dying one can hope to ascend to godhood. Like usual, I agree with most of TA's analysis. I just don't think Marika betrayed the Hornsens right out of the gate, so to speak. In fact, Marika could be already dead at this point, for what is death but the separation of the body and the soul? Technically speaking, Miquella and Ranni are both dead. That didn't stop them from being agents in the world. But the main issue I have with this line of thinking is what Leda says next. She says,
"What followed was a war unseen,"
referring to Messmer's crusade against the Hornsens. This seems to imply that the crusade happened immediately right after Marika's ascension, which would make sense if she indeed betrayed the Hornsens at the Divine Gateway. I will imagine you'll be pretty mad too, if your carefully planned deification ritual was sabotaged. And judging by the Hornsens' usual attitudes toward their enemies, it is safe to say that an immediate war was inevitable. This is all good and dandy until you realize that it is an irrefutable fact that the crusade happened after the Liurnier War, which again is way later in the history of the Erdtree. We have two named bosses to prove that. So, if the original sin was really committed at the Gate of Divinity, what is going on with the Hornsens during all this time? Why didn't they wage a war? If they did, why was there no evidence of it? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. In fact, by insisting that the original sin was committed at the gate, we make the whole story worse. The Hornsens now seem like an afterthought, something to round up a sad Marika backstory, instead of living and breathing collection of people and culture. It is clear that we can't take the implications of Leda's narration at face value. Rather, the timing of the narration of the story trailer is made for dramatic effect. Instead, it makes more sense to assume that Marika's ascension was the seduction, only for the betrayal to come way later in the form of Messmer, which by the way is a snake. Thought I'll just throw that out there. Marika might have been planning her betrayal since her ascension, but to be honest, she's got bigger fish to fry at this point of the story. It would be strategically a very bad move to betray your own allies while you are waging a full-on war against the fire giants. She was literally fighting a force of nature. I could be proven wrong on this front if there is good enough evidence to support a pre-crusade struggle between the Erdtree and the Hornsens. But if you could find it, please share it with me. I've lost hair thinking about this, and you will be helping with my mental health. So after all that, let us return to the original point we're trying to make. The original sin is Marika's betrayal of the Hornsent, perpetrated by her secret daughter Melina. This betrayal, above all, was signified by the first burning of the Erdtree, turning it into a spiritual tree, cleansing it of the Hornsent spirits, and separating the land of shadow from the lands between. Marika's Erdtree might never have the guidance of the greater will, but it kind of doesn't matter. As long as the faithful still believe in the system, and the system delivers on its promises, who cares about what an eldritch god in a black hole has to say about all this? The fly in the ointment has always been the fickleness of gods, no better than men, after all. Messmer will play his part as well, as he leads a ruthless army against the enemy of his mother. Together, the kindling siblings fulfill their duties as they are thematically, if not literally, born for. For fire represent both beginning and end, and the beginning of the Golden Order fundamentalism is the end of the Age of Plenty, set aflame and buried in the shadow. Let us conclude today's discussion by reading an item description of Messmer. Messmer's armor's description reads, "On his mother's wishes, Messmer made himself a symbol of fear, undertaking the cleansing crusade she desired. Direct thy maledictions, thy ire, and thy grief towards me alone." The precise meaning of this last line, said by Messmer, is ambiguous, but the emotion of this line is clear. For quite literally all the power in the world, Marika could not let go of her grief, and for this, she will commit a cardinal sin, and things will never be the same again.
Marika! Is this what it is to sin? Will things never be the same again?
A lot is left unsaid. I know what all the hardcore lore enthusiasts are thinking about right now. What about that glowing colored left eye? I deliberately dodged all of the questions about destined death, especially concerning the topic of the original sin, because I didn't want to cram all the information into one video. But don't worry, we'll talk about the original sin again when we talk about the Glowmite Queen. That one eye of that one color is a topic better suited for the Serpent video. But for now, it's goodbye, and hopefully, see you again soon. Subscribe?